Welcome to Life Stories, where we bring you real-life tales of strength, resilience, and the power of taking control. Today's story is one of courage, determination, and a woman's fight to reclaim her life. After a sudden surgery leaves her vulnerable, she returns home to find her space taken over, her things moved, and her family turning against her. What follows is a gripping journey of self-protection and a calculated plan that leads to an unexpected victory. Subscribe to our channel and join us today as we dive into this powerful story. I stood in the doorway of what used to be my bedroom, still wearing my hospital bracelet. The room, once a sanctuary, now looked completely different. The walls that I had carefully painted a soft, calming green were now covered in bright, overwhelming pink wallpaper. The photos of me, of the life I had built, were gone, replaced by framed pictures of Sarah, my sister-in-law. Even my expensive memory foam mattress was buried under a mountain of shiny pillows and scattered unicorn toys. It was as if someone had completely erased me from this space, my space. "This is Sarah's room now," Carol, my mother-in-law, said, her voice laced with a smug satisfaction. She stood behind Sarah, her hands resting on Sarah's shoulders as though she had just won some battle. I tried to steady myself, feeling the dull ache from my recent surgery, a reminder of the toll my body had taken only a week before. My mind raced, but I kept my voice even. "Interesting timing," I muttered calmly, though inside, I was seething. This wasn't just about a bedroom. It had never been just about a room. Carol had been trying to push me out of this house for years. Ever since I had married Michael, she had made it clear that I wasn't quite good enough for her son. I came from a modest background, not the wealth and privilege that she expected in a daughter-in-law. And despite all the hard work I put in, the way I tried to be a good partner to Michael, Carol never respected me. "I thought it would be good for Sarah while she looks for a job in the city," Sarah said, spinning around in my grandmother's old vanity chair. Her voice was sweet, but there was a hidden smugness in it that I couldn't ignore. "It's much better than that tiny guest room I saw." I looked at her, trying not to let my emotions show. I knew exactly what she was trying to do. Carol stood by, watching my reaction carefully, her eyes narrowed with a certain anticipation, almost like she was waiting for me to explode. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. "Where are my things?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "They're in the basement," Carol replied nonchalantly. "Most of it was old anyway. Sarah needs the space." The dismissiveness in her tone hit me harder than I expected. I nodded, trying to remain calm. "And Michael? What does he think about all of this?" I could feel my heart racing. Not just because of the injustice but because I already knew how Michael would respond. Sarah hesitated. "He understands," she said quietly. "Family helps each other." Carol spoke quickly, almost cutting Sarah off. "Yes, Michael understands that family comes first. Sarah's going through a tough time right now." A tough time. I knew the full story. Sarah had cheated on her fiancé and gotten kicked out of her apartment. But, to Carol, Sarah could do no wrong. She was always the golden child. And I had long learned that no matter how much I tried, I would never be able to compete for Carol's affection. I stepped further into the room, feeling the stitches in my stomach pulse slightly with the movement. My breath caught for a second. "Well," I said, trying to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. "This is unexpected, but timing is everything." Carol's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean by that?" she asked, her voice suddenly cold. I smiled, but it wasn't kind. "Nothing," I said, my tone light. "Just something to think about." I turned and walked away. But before I reached the door, I stopped. I couldn't help myself. "Oh, Sarah," I called, looking back. "Be careful with that vanity. The left drawer sticks sometimes." I heard them whispering behind me as I walked downstairs. It was like they thought they had won, that I would give up easily. But they had no idea what was coming. Sitting at my desk in the home office, the only room they hadn't dared to touch, I opened my laptop. It was my safe haven, the one place where I kept all the important documents. In this room, I had planned my next steps for months. I had seen this coming. Even before I had been rushed into surgery. There was something in the way Carol had always treated me. Something that had made me realize I couldn't rely on Michael to protect me. 3 days. That was all I needed. I pulled out a folder from the safe, feeling the weight of the papers inside. The house deed, the insurance documents, and, most importantly, the one document that would change everything, the legal papers that would take control of my life back into my hands. I had set this plan in motion months ago after Carol's last attempt to take control of everything. As I was looking through my email, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Michael. Just heard from Mom. Hope you're okay with the room situation. Sarah really needs our support right now. I stared at the message, feeling a combination of disappointment and determination. Michael, he always tried to please everyone. But this time, he had made the wrong choice. It's fine, I texted back, my fingers moving quickly over the keys. Everything is exactly where it needs to be. I went back to my work, already knowing that in 3 days, everything would change. Margaret and Sarah thought they had won, that they had taken over everything. But they didn't know what I had been preparing in the shadows. The time for their victory celebration was almost over. I smiled to myself as I closed my laptop, the weight of the papers in my hand now giving me a sense of peace. The next morning, I woke up on the couch in the living room. The loud music from upstairs, Sarah's music, blasted through the ceiling, irritating my already aching stomach. I should have been resting, but I was stuck here. My own house turned into an unfamiliar space. Sarah had completely taken over my bedroom, as if I was never supposed to return. And what made it worse was that Carol was acting as if everything was normal. As though I was just meant to accept it. I pushed myself up from the couch, feeling the familiar dull ache in my stomach, a reminder of my recent surgery. The pain was nothing compared to the frustration building inside me. I checked the time on my phone. It was 7:15 a.m., 2 days and 16 hours left. I whispered to myself, feeling the weight of my plan growing heavier in my hands. That's when Carol walked into the living room, wearing her usual expensive clothes. Her face painted with a look of superficial concern. "Oh good, you're awake," she said, her voice falsely sweet. "Sarah needs to use the shower, so you'll have to wait." I held my ground. "Actually, I have an appointment this morning," I replied, standing up slowly, trying not to aggravate the stitches in my stomach. Carol frowned. "An appointment? Shouldn't you be resting?" "It's just a quick meeting with my lawyer," I said, keeping my voice light and casual, not giving away the storm brewing beneath the surface. "Nothing too tiring." Her face changed, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. For a brief second, I could see the fear in her eyes, though she quickly covered it up with that false smile. "Lawyer? What lawyer?" "Oh, just updating some documents after my hospital stay. Normal stuff," I said, shrugging as though it were no big deal. I grabbed my things, watching as Carol shifted uncomfortably, her facade starting to crack. I relished the moment, feeling a sense of power rising within me. As I headed toward the door, she called after me, "Does Michael know about this?" I turned back to her, giving her a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "He will." The law office was quiet when I arrived. My lawyer, Patricia Chen, was waiting for me. She had been my friend since college and had seen more than enough of Carol's manipulative behavior to understand what was at stake. I sat down at her desk, my fingers brushing over the familiar folder that contained everything I needed. "Everything's ready," Patricia said, sliding the folder toward me. Her eyes met mine with understanding. "Are you sure? Once we file these papers, there's no going back." I looked through the documents again. My stomach churned as I saw everything laid out in front of me, the papers that would shift the balance of power in my favor. "Patricia," I said, my voice low but firm. "They took over my bedroom while I was in the hospital. If I don't stop them now, they won't stop until I'm completely pushed out of this house. Michael refuses to stand up to them. He thinks if he ignores it, it will go away. But this time, he's wrong." Patricia nodded. "All right, I'll file these today." They'll get the notification in about 48 hours. I felt a calm certainty wash over me. I had planned this for months. And now, it was all coming together. In just 2 days, Margaret and Sarah would realize the mistake they had made. As I returned home, I could hear Sarah laughing upstairs as she rearranged furniture in my old bedroom. I wanted to shout, to scream at them, but I held my tongue. Let them enjoy the moment. It wouldn't last. When I walked into the house, Sarah was lounging on the couch, surrounded by shopping bags, scrolling through her phone. She didn't even look up at me. Mom said you went to see a lawyer, she said, pretending not to care but clearly curious. It's just routine paperwork, I said, walking past her and heading straight for my office. I needed to check if phase 2 of my plan was ready. You know, Sarah called after me, Mom thinks you're planning something. But it won't work. This is our house now. I stopped in my tracks, turning back to face her. Our house? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Yeah, she said smugly. Mom says Michael is the only one with a real career. So technically everything belongs to him. And we're his real family. I thought about the legal documents Patricia was filing and the plan that had been set in motion months ago. The smile that tugged at the corner of my lips was barely visible. Interesting, I said, before closing the door behind me. As the evening drew closer, Michael finally came home. He found me sitting in my office, working on my laptop. He hesitated at the door, as if unsure of how to approach me. Hey, he said softly. Mom said you went to see a lawyer. I looked up at him. Really looked at him. The man I had married. The man who had never stood up to his mother. Who had let his sister take over our bedroom. I couldn't hide the hurt anymore. Yeah, I did, I replied, my voice steady but cold. He ran a hand through his hair. Clearly uncomfortable. Look, I know the bedroom situation isn't great. But it's only temporary. Sarah's going through a rough time. I cut him off, my voice sharp. When I was in the hospital, did you know what they were planning? His silence spoke volumes. Right, I said, turning back to my laptop. You should know that things are going to change soon. Michael frowned, clearly not understanding. What does that mean? In 36 hours, I said calmly. Your mother and sister are going to learn some interesting things about property ownership and legal rights. He laughed nervously. Come on, you're overreacting. Mom's just helping Sarah get back on her feet. I stood up, the pain in my stomach a sharp reminder of my surgery. No, Michael, your mother is trying to push me out. And you're letting her. I paused for a moment, letting the weight of my words sink in. But what none of you know is that I've been keeping records. Every time they've moved my things. Every manipulative comment. Every attempt to take over. In 36 hours, all of it is going to matter. His face went pale. What are you saying? I walked over to my desk, opening the drawer slowly and pulling out a thick envelope. Remember last year, when your mom tried to sell my grandmother's antiques while we were on vacation? That's when I started preparing. This has everything, photos, videos, legal documents. He looked at me, truly afraid for the first time. In 36 hours, it all becomes public record. I whispered. The next morning, as I sat at my desk, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps coming down the stairs. Margaret's voice followed shortly after, raised in anger. What is this? What have you done? She demanded. I stood up slowly, savoring the moment. The papers had arrived, just as Patricia had said they would. I walked into the living room to find Margaret shaking, clutching the legal documents in her hands. Sarah was nearby, looking pale, and Michael sat on the couch, his head buried in his hands. I couldn't help but smile as I calmly approached them. Good, I said, my voice even. You got the notice. Margaret's hands trembled as she looked at the papers. This says I own this house. She whispered, her voice barely audible. Yes, it does, I replied, not missing a beat. You see, last year when you tried to sell my grandmother's antiques, I realized I needed to protect myself. So, I bought Michael's share of the house. Margaret's face turned white. That's impossible, Sarah gasped. This is Michael's house. I shook my head. No, it's not. Michael signed the papers himself. It's all legal. Even your signature as a witness is there. Margaret went silent, her eyes scanning the documents. She couldn't find an escape. The truth was out. I've been keeping records. I continued, my voice steady. Every time you moved my things. Every time you tried to take over. Every attempt to push me out. Now, all of it matters. And in 24 hours, you'll be gone. Amanda started to cry, running upstairs, and Margaret froze in place, clutching the papers as though they were her lifeline. Michael looked at me, his expression a mixture of fear and understanding. You planned this, he whispered. No, I corrected him. I protected myself. You weren't going to do it. So I had to. I glanced at my watch. You have 24 hours to leave. Anything left behind will be thrown out. As they left, Michael hesitated, looking at me one last time. I'll pack my things, too, he said, his voice low. Probably best, I replied. The divorce papers are in that pile. Patricia will contact your lawyer. Michael stood there, half admiring and half regretful. That night, as I lay in my own bed for the first time in what felt like forever, I couldn't help but smile. The walls were already peeling. The pink wallpaper finally revealing the soft sage green beneath. The best revenge, I thought, isn't about getting even, it's about being smart. Protecting yourself, and knowing when to walk away. I pulled out my phone. Patricia had sent a text. Papers filed. You're officially free. It was over. They had thought they could take everything from me. But their biggest mistake had been underestimating me. As sunlight filled my room the next morning, I opened the stuck drawer in my vanity, the one they had always complained about. Inside were the property documents that had sealed their fate. It was time to rebuild my life. Exactly the way I wanted. Remember, the best way to get your life back is by taking control. Subscribe to Life Stories to follow more stories of strength and resilience.